Don't miss these life-changing truths from Pastor Adam Burton's latest sermon at Central Baptist Church.
You know what we do when life stops making sense? We take over. We start working the angles, trying to figure out how to hold everything together. We tell ourselves that it's fine, we're just being responsible and smart. But if we're honest about what's driving it, it's usually fear. Fear that if you don't step in, the whole thing falls apart. Or that God isn't moving fast enough for us, and so we make a plan. Well, last week, we talked about a name that you didn't build, where God made a promise to Abram that Abram did nothing to earn. He gave him a land and made it a nation. He told Abram that he would be a blessing and that he would reach every family on earth. All Abram had to do was to trust the one who made it. Now that sounds simple enough until the famine hits. You know what we do when life stops making sense? We take over. We start working the angles, trying to figure out how to hold everything together. We tell ourselves that it's fine, we're just being responsible and smart. But if we're honest about what's driving it, it's usually fear. Fear that if you don't step in, the whole thing falls apart. Or that God isn't moving fast enough for us. And so we make a plan. And the plan, it feels necessary, and it might even work for a while. But somewhere in the middle of it, without us even realizing it, we started protecting ourselves at the expense of the people we love the most. Abram is about to show us exactly what that looks like. We're about to read one of the most uncomfortable passages in the whole story of Abraham. God has just made the biggest promise in Abram's life, and the very next thing that happens is a famine. The land God promised Abram, he can't even feed him. So Abram does what any of us would do. He packs up and he goes where the food is. In this case, it's in Egypt. And that's where things get complicated. So turn in your Bibles with me as we read Genesis chapter 12. We'll be in verses 10 through 20. And if you got them, raise them up so I know we're ready to start reading. All right. Well, let's read Genesis chapter 12, verses 10 through 20. Now there was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you're my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And then when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram. And he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. May God bless the reading of his holy word. Well, that's a hard passage. Abram is supposed to be the hero of this story. Instead, he's standing in Egypt, holding livestock that he received in exchange for his wife, while a pagan king lectures him on basic decency. And God still holds the promise together anyway. That's what we're going to sit with today. Trust God enough to let go. We're going to look at this passage in three movements. The first is letting go of your fear. The second is letting go of your plan. And the third is letting go of your failure. Three things that we hold on too tight, and three things that God is big enough to carry. First, let go of your fear. Notice how Abram talks to Sarai when they're about to cross the border. This is a desperate, frightened man pleading with his wife. Please, tell them you're my sister. There's a panic underneath those words. He's not a villain hatching a scheme. Abram is a man who is genuinely afraid, doing what frightened people do. He's trying to survive. But there's a moment happening right here that we almost always skip past. It's the moment between fear and the decision. See, Abram knows what he's about to do. He knows it's a lie that puts Sarai at risk. He also knows that if this works the way that he hopes it will, that his wife is going to pay the price for his survival. He knows all of that. And yet he does it anyway. That's the moment we need to sit with, because it's easy for us to do the same. First, there's the rationalization. We tell ourselves that this situation is exceptional. Right? The normal rules don't apply here because the stakes are too high. We tell ourselves that God will understand because we're just trying to keep things from falling apart. The rationalization, it sounds noble and wise from the inside, but it almost always never is. Next, there's the silence. This is the moment that we know we should pray and we don't. We just move. The text doesn't record a prayer here. Maybe Abram prayed and we're not told about it, but what we are told is what he did next. He made a plan. And what a person does in the moment of fear tells us a lot about where their trust actually is. And last, there's the point of no return. Now, this is the moment the decision is made and we know we can't walk it back. So Abram turns to Sarai and makes the request. And whatever she felt in the moment, we don't know because the text doesn't tell us. Sarah doesn't get a voice here. We know that she complies and she goes along with her husband's plan to protect himself at her expense. Now that detail should sit uncomfortably with us. Because Abram isn't just lying to the Egyptians. He's asking the person he was supposed to protect to become the instrument of her own vulnerability. He's putting his fear ahead of her safety. And once that request leaves his mouth, there's no taking it back. And we know how that feels, what that feels like too. Maybe not in those exact terms, but we know what it's like to say the thing that we can't unsay, to cross the line that we told ourselves we would never cross, and then we feel the door close behind us. And in that moment, the fear that drove us there, it doesn't go away. It just changes shape. Now it's not the fear of what might happen, it's the fear of what we just did. That's where fear leads us. We think it protects us from the thing that we're afraid of, when in reality, it just trades one danger for another, and we end up paying for it. Now, most of us have a version of this. The conversation that we steered away from the truth because the truth felt too dangerous. Or the moment that we chose self-preservation over the person standing right in front of us, and we told ourselves, it's the only option. But here's where the gospel lands in this point. Jesus faced his own Egypt. After his baptism, he was led into the wilderness for 40 days with nothing to eat. 40 days. That's the ultimate famine. I mean, can you imagine how weak he was? I've seen what hangry looks like when some of us miss a meal or two. The enemy came to Jesus and said, if you are the Son of God, to tell these stones to become bread. Save yourself. Do what you need to do to survive. And Jesus didn't. He entrusted himself entirely to his Father. He let go of his own survival and he trusted the one who had promised to sustain him. He succeeded exactly where Abram failed. And here's what that means for us. It means that his faithfulness in the wilderness gets credited to our account. We don't have to hold it all together. The one who held it together in our place is the one who's holding us now. So when the famine hits, and it will, we don't have to take over. We can just let the fear go because somebody already faced it for us and he didn't flinch. Second, let go of your plan. So Abram's plan is working. That's the most unsettling thing about verses 14 through 16. Abram's calculation, it paid off. The Egyptians, they noticed Sarai's beauty exactly like he said they would. She was taken into Pharaoh's house exactly like he feared. And then Abram, well, he's sitting there in his tent, accumulating the sheep, oxen, donkeys, servants, and camels. The scheme, it worked. He's alive and he's wealthy. By every visible measure, Abram is winning, but look at what it cost him. Abram lost his wife. She didn't leave him. She was taken. And Abram is silent. He doesn't fight for his wife. He doesn't even say a word. He just stands there holding his new livestock while Sarai disappears behind the walls of a palace that was never meant for her. And we've seen this before. Way back in the garden, Adam stood silent while his wife reached for the one thing that God told him not to touch. He was right there, and he said and did nothing. And now here's Abram doing the same thing. The man who was supposed to protect his wife is the reason she needed protecting in the first place. And he can't say a word because this whole disaster is his fault. Now, there's a word for what Abram's doing here. He's managing. He's trying to control the outcome. He's convinced himself that the plan is necessary, that sometimes you just have to make hard choices in order to survive. And his plan worked. But somewhere in the middle of it working, he lost the thing that mattered most to him. And we've watched this play out in public life. You think about a politician who starts out with a genuine conviction. It doesn't matter which party. You can fill in the name yourself. They want to serve and do good. But then the pressure comes. The money starts flowing in and campaigns cost a lot of money. But that money often comes with strings attached. The compromise, it feels small at first, just this once. It's what you have to do in order to get reelected. And the power, it keeps growing. The poll numbers keep climbing. By every visible measure, they're winning, but something is quietly disappearing. You can see it in their eyes after just a few years that the person who walked in isn't the same person standing there anymore. The plan worked, but the plan cost them everything that made the plan worth having. And most of us will never run for office. But we run the same calculation in smaller rooms. We manage the conversation to protect our reputation, or we decide that we shade the truth in order to keep the peace. I mean, how many times do we make the safe choice instead of the honest one because the safe choice keeps the things from falling apart? And we tell ourselves, well, it's necessary. But what we're really doing is we're holding on to a plan that was never ours to hold on to. Here's what verse 17 shows us. It says, while Abraham is standing there in silence, God is not silent. The Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai. God steps in and acts. He does what Abram refused to do. He fights for the woman that Abram abandoned. And he does it not because Abram deserved it, but because the promise was never Abram's to protect in the first place. This is the whole moment this passage is building toward, and it points forward to something even bigger. Because hundreds of years after this, there was another Pharaoh who would hold God's people captive. And God would step in again. He would send the plagues again. He would fight for his people again when they had no power to fight for themselves. The Exodus was God proving that his plan survives what ours destroys every single time. And it points forward even further still. It points to when God's own Son would bear the judgment that we deserved, when he would take the plague of our sin on himself so that his captive people could walk free. Jesus didn't manage the outcome. He didn't protect himself. He let go of his own plan and he trusted his Father completely. And because he did, we don't have to hold our plan so tight. The plan that you might be gripping right now, you know, the one that feels necessary, the one you've convinced yourself, this is the only way through. God is big enough to handle what happens when you let it go. He proved it in Egypt, and he proved it at the Red Sea. He proved it at the cross. So let go of your plan. Lastly, let go of your failure. Look at Abram when Pharaoh calls him in. The most powerful man in Egypt summons him, and Abram stands there with nothing to say. Pharaoh is blunt with Abram. What is this that you've done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your sister or your wife? Why did you say she was your sister? 3 questions, and Abram answers none of them. Not one word. Because there's no defense for what he did. The man that God chose to bless the entire world is standing in a pagan palace, getting lectured on basic decency by a king who doesn't even worship Abram's God. Think about that. The patriarch of faith is silent and exposed. He's holding livestock that he accumulated while his wife was taken from him. And then Pharaoh says, take her and go. That's it. He doesn't punish him. He just is told to get out. So Abram walks out of Egypt with Sarai, carrying all the wealth that he accumulated. He didn't earn or negotiate the exit. God is the one who arranged it. That's the most grace-filled moment in this passage. It's not the plagues that God brought or the wealth that he accumulated. It's the exit with God sending his broken servant back to the promise anyway. We know what it feels like to sit in that room. Maybe not on the scale that Abram failed, but we've all had our version of it. When the plan that we were certain about or the decision that we knew was just right, it falls apart in front of the people that we respect. We know there's nothing to say because we can see exactly where it went wrong, and so can everybody else. I had one of those moments earlier in my ministry. I was serving as a children's minister, and I was convinced that we needed to make a significant change in how we did Sunday school. I believed in it. I had the blessing of my senior pastor. I talked with several people about it. I thought we were ready. But I kept the circle small because I didn't want the idea to get picked apart and fail before it had a chance. I thought I was being strategic, but looking back, I was being afraid. Word got out anyway. And when I walked into that meeting, I saw faces that I didn't expect to see. People who didn't normally show up for this kind of meeting. And I knew immediately that this wasn't going to go the way that I planned. I still made my case. I laid out the vision. Then I opened it up for discussion. And they came after it. Hard. I sat there and I took it, trying to hold myself together, staying gracious. I was trying not to let them see how much it was landing. But it was landing. When it was over, one of my volunteers came up to me quietly afterwards, and she said that she was sorry for how some of them acted, that I didn't deserve it. I thanked her and I told her, look, I don't hold any ill will for it. And I meant it. But to be honest, I walked out of that room feeling like I had been taken apart in public. The vision that I carried was gone. And I had to drive home and I had to figure out what to do with that. But here's what I didn't know that night. God was already working. He used that painful meeting to show me something that I couldn't see from inside of my own certainty. We weren't ready for that kind of change. There were other areas where the volunteers were willing to be guided, and that's where the fruit came. Not from the plan that I was gripping so tightly, but from the places I didn't even know to look. So God used my failure to redirect me towards something better than what I was fighting for. That's what God does. And that's what He did for Abram. He didn't wait for Abram to earn his way back. He sent the plagues on a pagan palace. He arranged an exit and pointed his broken servant back toward the promise. Because the promise was never about Abram's performance. It was always about God's faithfulness. And here's where it lands for us. Because every one of us is carrying something that we failed at. A relationship we damaged, that moment that we handled a decision badly and we would give anything to do it over. And the enemy of our souls wants us to believe that our failure is the end of the story. That God is done with us, that the promise doesn't survive what we did. But look at Abram walking out of Egypt. He's broken and exposed. Yet God is still holding him. He's pointing him back to the promise made by a God whose faithfulness doesn't depend on ours. That's the gospel. Jesus, the one who never failed, took our failure on himself at the cross so that we could walk out of our Egypt the same way that Abram did. We didn't deserve the exit, but He arranged it anyway. So whatever you're carrying in this room today, whatever failure you've been holding on to, convinced you're disqualified or convinced that God is finished with you because of what you did or didn't do, let go of it. Not because it matters. No, it does matter. Let go of it because the God who sent plagues on Pharaoh's house to rescue a man who didn't deserve rescuing is the same God who sent His Son to bear every plague that we deserved so that we could walk free. He's held on to worse than this. He held on to Abram, and He will hold on to us. I'll invite our worship team to come at this time. Last week we saw Abram at his best. He left everything. He packed up his family and he walked toward a promise that he couldn't see the end of. And we were inspired by that. We thought that that's the kind of faith that I want. That's the kind of man that God can use. And then the first crisis hits. The very first one. We don't even get out of the chapter. Abram goes into survival mode, and he nearly destroys everything that God promised him in the process. That's not the hero we expected. But here's what the text won't let us do. It won't let us stand at a distance and shake our heads at Abram. Because we know this story. We've lived it. We've had our moments where we stepped out in faith and we meant every word of it. And we've also had our moments when the famine hit and we stopped trusting and started scheming. Then we ended up holding things we never wanted. The gap between those two versions of ourselves is where most of us really live. And here's what I want you to hear. God already knew about the gap. He knew it when He called Abram and made the promise. He knew exactly what Abram would do the moment the pressure came. Our failure doesn't surprise Him. It grieves Him. Don't misunderstand that. It grieves Him deeply. But He doesn't look at our scheming and fear and shrug. It matters to Him. It cost Him greatly. It cost Him His son. But it doesn't surprise Him. And it doesn't stop Him. He knew what Abram would do in Egypt. And He called him anyway. He knew what we would do when our famine hit, and He sent His son anyway. He works in His plan out in spite of our failure, through our failure, and sometimes because of our failure. Oh, His faithfulness is so much bigger than our failure. Abram, he walked out of Egypt broken and speechless, and God still held him, pointing him back toward the promise. That's the only reason any of us are still standing. So we can trust God enough to let go. In a moment, we're going to sing together. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to what God has been saying to you this morning. Maybe you've never trusted God with your life at all. Maybe you've been running your own calculations for as long as you can remember, trying to hold everything together on your own. Today, you can let go of that too. You can trust the one who let everything go for you. If that's you, I want to invite you to come forward today and let me pray with you. That's the most important decision you'll ever make, and you don't have to make it alone. Maybe you're already a follower of Christ, but you walked in here today holding something that you need to release. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's a plan. Maybe it's even a failure. And God's been speaking to you this morning. You can come forward too. There's no shame in that. There's only grace. If coming forward feels too much right now, look in your bulletin. There's the communication card. You can mark whatever decision that you want to make this morning. You can hand it to me at the end of the service. Nobody's going to know about it. But however you respond. Don't walk out of here the same way you walked in. God arranged an exit for Abram out of the worst mess of his life. He can arrange one for you too. I'm Pastor Adam Burton from Central Baptist Church. I want to personally thank you for watching our sermon today. It means so much to us that you've taken time to connect with God's Word through our ministry. If this message encouraged you, I invite you to explore more about our church at cbcmaysville.com. You'll find resources, upcoming events, and ways to get involved. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for more content like this. We'd love to stay connected with you and to continue to grow together in faith. Thanks again for watching. God bless you, and I hope to see you soon, either online or in person.